Close your eyes and drift back in time. Imagine a glittering island empire, palaces of shining stone, canals circling in perfect rings, towers that caught the golden sun. A place where wisdom, beauty, and power flourish together. And then silence. In a single night, the waves swallowed a whole, leaving nothing but legend. This is the story of Atlantis, the lost civilization that has haunted human imagination for over 2,000 years. Was it a real place buried beneath the sea, a forgotten chapter of history, or a timeless warning about the rise and fall of empires? Tonight, let yourself drift on this journey through myths, mysteries, and meanings. As the ocean of time carries you gently, we will explore the entire story of Atlantis, its rise, its glory, its fall, and the lessons it still whispers to us today. So settle in, breathe deep, and allow the lost world of Atlantis to guide you into sleep. The origins of Atlantis. Close your eyes and imagine the world as the ancient Greeks once described it. Long before our modern nations, before maps and compasses, they told stories of distant lands across the sea. Among these tales was one that has fascinated people for thousands of years, the story of Atlantis, a great and powerful civilization said to have vanished beneath the ocean. The first mention of Atlantis comes from the Greek philosopher Plato, around 360 BCE. In two of his dialogues, the Timaeus and the Critias, he describes a mighty island nation, larger than Libya and Asia combined, lying beyond the Pillars of Heracles, the narrow straits we know today as the Strait of Gibraltar. Plato wrote that Atlantis was once a powerful kingdom, ruled by kings descended from the god Poseidon himself. Its people were advanced, wealthy, and ambitious. But in time, they grew corrupt, and the gods punished them by sending the island into the depths of the sea in a single day and night of disaster. According to Plato, Atlantis was not just a myth to entertain listeners. He framed it as a true account passed down through Egyptian priests to the Athenian statesman Solon, and from Solon to Plato's own family. Whether Plato meant this as history, allegory, or philosophy has been debated ever since. Yet, from his words, the legend was born. Atlantis, in Plato's description, was an island with a unique geography. At its center lay a great plain surrounded by concentric rings of land and water, carefully engineered by its people. At the heart of this design stood a magnificent city with temples, palaces, and harbors bustling with ships. The Atlanteans were masters of architecture, engineering, and naval power. They mined precious metals like orichalcum, a mysterious substance said to glow with fiery brilliance, second only to gold in value. They built temples covered in silver and gold, and their capital was adorned with statues of their gods and kings. The empire of Atlantis was vast, stretching its influence across parts of Europe and Africa. Plato describes how they sought to expand their dominion, sending fleets across the Mediterranean. They clashed with the early Athenians, who, despite being outmatched, bravely resisted the Atlantean invasion. According to the story, Athens emerged victorious against the mighty empire, proving the strength of justice and moderation over greed and arrogance. But not long after this war, divine punishment fell upon Atlantis. The island shook with earthquakes and storms, and in one terrible day and night, it was swallowed by the sea, leaving only myths behind. Plato's story ends abruptly. The dialogue Critias breaks off mid-sentence, leaving us without a full account. Yet the fragments are enough to have inspired centuries of speculation. Was Atlantis real? Was it a memory of an ancient civilization, distorted by time and storytelling? Or was it simply Plato's way of teaching moral lessons about pride and corruption? In the centuries after Plato, the tale of Atlantis faded. Few ancient writers took it seriously, and for a long time, it was little more than a philosophical curiosity. But in the Renaissance, as Europeans began exploring the oceans and rediscovering Greek texts, the legend came alive again. Thinkers and explorers wondered if the newly discovered lands across the Atlantic Ocean might be connected to Plato's lost island. Some thought Atlantis could have been the Americas. Others imagined it as a sunken continent, waiting to be found beneath the waves. The mystery deepened with the rise of modern archaeology. In the 19th and 20th centuries, excavations uncovered ancient cities like Troy, Mycenae, and Knossos, places once believed to be myths themselves. If those civilizations had been rediscovered, why not Atlantis too? Writers began connecting the legend to real events, especially the eruption of the volcano on Thera, today's Santorini, around 1600 BCE. That disaster wiped out much of the Minoan civilization, which had been advanced, wealthy, and powerful in the Aegean. The parallels to Plato's story were striking. A rich maritime culture destroyed suddenly by natural forces. Could the memory of the Minoans have inspired the tale of Atlantis? But the legend was never confined to Greece alone. As centuries passed, Atlantis became a canvas for imagination across the world. In the 19th century, Ignatius Donnelly, an American congressman and writer, published a book titled Atlantis, The Antediluvian World. He argued that Atlantis was the source of all ancient civilizations, Egyptian, Mesopotamian, Mayan, and that its destruction had scattered its people across the globe. Donnelly's book was wildly popular, and it gave rise to modern visions of Atlantis as the cradle of civilization, a place of great knowledge lost in a cataclysm. From then on, Atlantis became part of popular culture. Writers, poets, and later filmmakers drew on the myth, imagining Atlanteans as wise rulers, mighty warriors, or even beings with supernatural powers. Some linked Atlantis with theories of lost continents like Lemuria, or with pseudoscientific ideas of advanced technology and extraterrestrial contact. In spiritual movements like Theosophy, Atlantis became a stage in humanity's hidden history, a place where mystical knowledge once flourished. But while myths and theories grew, the true core of Atlantis remained simple, a warning tale of human pride and downfall. Whether real or imagined, the Atlanteans represented a civilization that reached the heights of wealth and power, only to collapse because of their own corruption. Plato used the story to remind his audience that even the greatest empires can fall if they abandon virtue and moderation. And yet, the allure of Atlantis lies not only in its moral, but in its mystery. The idea of a lost land beneath the sea touches something deep in the human imagination. We long for hidden worlds, for forgotten knowledge, for the possibility that our past holds secrets yet to be uncovered. The ocean, vast and unexplored, is the perfect hiding place for such a dream. As we drift deeper into the tale, remember that the legend of Atlantis is more than one story. It is a tapestry woven through time, changing with each generation that tells it. In the beginning, it was Plato's allegory. Then it became the explorer's dream, the archaeologist's puzzle, the writer's fantasy. Whether you see it as truth, myth, or metaphor, Atlantis remains one of humanity's most enduring mysteries, a story that refuses to sink, no matter how many centuries pass. And so, the journey begins. From the words of an ancient philosopher, to the echoes of lost civilizations, to the waves of imagination that still ripple today, Atlantis has captured our minds and hearts. As we continue, we will look closer at the geography and culture of this mythical land, at the possible real-world inspirations, and at the countless theories that have grown from its legend. For now, picture the shining city at the center of the rings of water, the temples glistening with gold and orichalcum, the harbors filled with ships bound for conquest. Imagine the pride of its kings, the splendor of its palaces, and the shadow of the fate that awaits them. The geography, culture, and daily life of Atlantis. In Plato's telling, the world of Atlantis was not just a kingdom, it was a masterpiece of nature and human design, a place unlike anywhere else. At the heart of the island lay its great plain, surrounded by mountains that stretched toward the sea. Rivers flowed from these highlands, bringing fresh water to the fertile fields. Crops grew in abundance, and herds of animals grazed across the land. Everything about Atlantis seemed designed for prosperity, as though the gods themselves had shaped it for greatness. The centerpiece of this vast island was the capital city, a marvel of symmetry and engineering. Imagine standing above it, looking down from the mountains. You would see rings of land and water, perfect circles carved into the earth, alternating between wide channels of sea and broad strips of land. These rings were connected by bridges and tunnels, and in the very center stood the royal palace and temple of Poseidon, gleaming with silver, gold, and the mysterious metal orichalcum. Ships sailed smoothly into the harbor, and canals carried goods from one ring to the next, creating a living machine of trade and power. The city itself was dazzling. The Atlanteans built their homes with red, black, and white stone quarried from the island, polishing the walls until they shone. The roofs were covered in precious metals, and the streets echoed with the sound of markets, artisans, and traders. Statues of gods and kings stood tall in public squares, reminding citizens of their divine ancestry. In the central temple, the largest of them all, a colossal statue of Poseidon towered over worshippers. He was shown riding a chariot drawn by winged horses. His sons gathered around him, a reminder of the bond between gods and mortals. But beyond the beauty and wealth, Atlantis thrived because of its resources. The land was rich with minerals and metals. Gold and silver were plentiful, and orichalcum, a rare and fiery metal, was mined in great quantities. The island also produced everything a civilization could need: grain, fruits, vegetables, and livestock. There were forests filled with wild animals, even elephants, and seas brimming with fish. Atlantis, in every sense, was a land of plenty. The Atlanteans themselves were described as powerful, ambitious, and skilled. They built a society that valued strength and achievement. Their kings, 10 in number, ruled different parts of the island, but they came together to govern as a council. These rulers were descendants of Poseidon and a mortal woman named Cleito, who, according to the legend, was the first queen of Atlantis. Their dynasty carried both divine authority and human will, blending the world of gods and men. The government of Atlantis was both monarchy and federation. Each king ruled his own territory, but none could declare war on another. They swore oaths of loyalty at the temple of Poseidon, where they sacrificed bulls and dipped their blood into sacred vessels. They promised to uphold justice, respect each other's rule, and never betray the unity of the empire. This council of kings gave Atlantis a sense of order, at least in its golden age. Daily life in Atlantis reflected this balance of wealth and discipline. The people worked the land, sailed the seas, and crafted goods from the island's rich materials. Farmers tilled the fertile plains, feeding the population. Traders carried goods across the Mediterranean, spreading the influence of Atlantis far beyond its shores. Builders and artisans worked with metals and stone, producing wonders that left visitors in awe. The society valued knowledge, skill, and innovation, and their achievements in engineering and architecture became legendary. But with prosperity came ambition. The Atlanteans were not content to remain within their island. They built powerful navies and armies, sending them to conquer distant lands. Plato describes how their empire stretched far and wide, reaching into parts of Europe and Africa. Their fleets ruled the seas, and their soldiers marched with discipline and strength. To many, Atlantis seemed unstoppable, a civilization destined to dominate the known world. Yet, in the midst of their power, a shadow grew. At first, the kings of Atlantis ruled with moderation, honoring the gods and maintaining justice. But over time, their divine nature began to fade. As generations passed, the human side of their lineage grew stronger than the divine. Pride, greed, and corruption began to spread among the rulers and the people. Wealth became more important than virtue. Conquest became more tempting than peace. It is here that the story of Atlantis begins to turn. Plato describes how the Atlanteans, in their arrogance, set their eyes upon Athens. They launched an invasion with the intent to bring the Greek city under their control. But Athens, though smaller and less wealthy, stood firm. The Athenians, guided by courage and justice, fought back against the mighty empire. Against all odds, they defeated the Atlantean forces, proving that virtue could triumph over greed. This defeat marked a turning point for Atlantis. The gods, watching the arrogance and corruption of the people, grew angry. The island that had once been blessed began to face its curse. Earthquakes shook the land, storms darkened the skies, and the sea rose with fury. In a single day and night, Atlantis sank into the depths of the ocean, leaving nothing but memory behind. And yet, in telling this tale, Plato was not only speaking of a lost land. He was teaching his listeners a lesson that no matter how rich, how powerful, or how advanced a civilization becomes, it cannot escape downfall if it loses sight of virtue. Atlantis was not just a place, but a mirror, a reflection of human ambition and its dangers. But while Plato's story is moral and philosophical, the world has always longed to fill in the details. What was it like to live in Atlantis during its golden age? How did people eat, dress, and work? What was the rhythm of their daily lives before the storms came? To imagine this, we look not only to Plato's brief descriptions, but also to the echoes of other ancient cultures that might have inspired him. The Minoans of Crete, for example, lived in palaces filled with art and advanced plumbing, trading across the seas. The Egyptians, with their temples and wealth, also provide glimpses of what an advanced society of Atlantis' scale might have been like. By weaving these fragments together, the image of daily Atlantean life grows richer. Perhaps in the mornings, farmers carried baskets of grain to the markets within the city's rings. Traders unloaded ships filled with copper, tin, and ivory from distant lands. Children played near the canals while priests prepared offerings to Poseidon in the great temple. The smell of bread, fish, and spices drifted through the air, and the sounds of hammers, hooves, and laughter filled the streets. Life in Atlantis was not only grand and powerful, but also ordinary in its own way, filled with the small moments that make up any human civilization. And it is here, in this imagined vision of daily life, that Atlantis feels most alive. Before the waves rose to swallow it, before the pride of kings led to downfall, it was a thriving world of people, working, building, loving, dreaming. A place where the divine touched the mortal, where prosperity was abundant, and where the seeds of both greatness and destruction were sown. Real-world inspirations and theories behind Atlantis. As the tale of Atlantis passed from Plato's pen into the imagination of the world, questions began to rise. Could such a place have truly existed? Or was it only a story crafted to teach a lesson? While some dismissed the account as pure allegory, others looked for traces of truth buried in the ruins of ancient civilizations and in the scars of natural disasters. Over time, countless theories emerged, each trying to anchor the myth of Atlantis to real-world history. Perhaps the most widely discussed inspiration is the Minoan civilization of Crete and the nearby island of Thera, known today as Santorini. The Minoans flourished around 2000 to 1600 BCE and were among the most advanced cultures of their time. Their palaces, such as the great complex at Knossos, were filled with colorful frescoes, advanced plumbing systems, and storerooms bursting with grain and goods. They were skilled sailors, trading widely across the Aegean and beyond. But the Minoans were struck by disaster. Around 1600 BCE, the volcano on Thera erupted in one of the most powerful explosions in human history. The island was devastated, much of it blasted away. Tsunamis swept across the Aegean, destroying coastal settlements. Ash darkened the skies, and the climate shifted. The Minoan civilization, though it lingered for a time, never fully recovered. Their fall left a shadow across the Mediterranean world. The similarities to Atlantis are striking. A wealthy, advanced maritime culture destroyed suddenly by a natural disaster. It is easy to see why many have linked the two. Some believe that the memory of the Minoans, carried through generations of storytelling, may have reached Plato and shaped his tale. The concentric design of Atlantis' capital city might even echo the circular caldera of Santorini, carved by the volcano's eruption. Others point to Egypt as a possible source. After all, Plato claimed the story came from Egyptian priests who told it to the Athenian lawmaker Solon centuries earlier. Egypt was ancient even in Solon's time, and its priests kept vast records of history and myth. Could they have preserved the memory of a foreign civilization destroyed long ago? The Egyptians also had their own tales of floods and catastrophes, which might have mingled with Greek imagination to form the legend of Atlantis. Still, the search for Atlantis has never stopped at the Aegean. Over the centuries, explorers and thinkers have placed it almost everywhere on the map. Some claimed it lay in the Atlantic Ocean itself, its ruins hidden beneath the waves. Others believed it was connected to the Americas, suggesting that Plato's story was a distant memory of lands across the sea. When European explorers reached the New World, some even thought they had rediscovered Atlantis itself. In more recent times, theories have spread even wider. Some suggest Atlantis could have been in Spain, near the marshes of Dinana, where ancient ruins and floodplains recall Plato's description. Others point to the Caribbean, with its islands and mysterious underwater formations like the so-called Bimini Road. There are even claims that Antarctica was once Atlantis, buried under ice after a sudden shift in the Earth's crust. Each of these theories reflects more than geography. They reflect the human longing to connect myth with reality. Atlantis is not just a story. It is a question mark, an invitation to imagine what might have been. And so, every time a new discovery is made, whether a sunken city, an ancient ruin, or a forgotten text, Atlantis rises again in the conversation. But beyond geography, there is also philosophy. Many scholars believe Plato never meant for Atlantis to be read as history at all. Instead, it was a parable, a way to teach lessons about virtue, power, and corruption. The Athenians, humble and just, defeated the Atlanteans, who were proud and greedy. The fall of Atlantis symbolized the dangers of arrogance and excess. To Plato, the story was less about a lost island and more about the choices societies make. Yet even if Atlantis was a teaching tool, that does not erase the possibility that it was inspired by real events. Myths often grow from seeds of truth. Just as the story of the Trojan War was once thought to be a legend until the ruins of Troy were found, Atlantis could have roots in real memories of disaster, war, or collapse. The eruption of Thera, the fall of the Minoans, the floods and earthquakes that shaped the ancient world. All of these could have merged into the myth. Consider, too, the broader context of human history. Again and again, civilizations have risen to greatness only to fall. The Sumerians, the Babylonians, the Maya all reached remarkable heights, then faded. Atlantis, whether real or not, embodies this pattern. It is the universal story of human ambition and fragility, told through the image of an island swallowed by the sea. Some researchers also explore the psychological power of the myth. The ocean has always been a place of mystery and fear. To ancient peoples, it was a vast unknown, filled with dangers and wonders. The idea that a great land could sink beneath its waves captured both awe and dread. Atlantis became not only a story of human failure, but also a reminder of nature's power, of how quickly the sea can take back what seems permanent. Over time, Atlantis became more than Plato's moral tale. It became a symbol of lost knowledge, hidden power, and forgotten history. In the Renaissance, thinkers saw it as a golden age of wisdom, a civilization that might have unlocked secrets long before our own. In the 19th century, writers like Ignatius Donnelly turned it into the supposed source of all cultures, spreading myths of diffusion and ancient connections. In the 20th and 21st centuries, it found new life in fiction, film, and fantasy, often depicted as a realm of advanced technology, mystical energy, or alien influence. Yet, behind all the theories and imaginings, the essential question remains: was Atlantis real? Did a great island truly sink into the sea, leaving no trace but memory? Or is it a mirror, showing us our own hopes and fears, our longing for lost worlds and hidden truths? Perhaps the most intriguing part of the story is that it never dies. Every new discovery, every new mystery of the past, adds fuel to the fire. When archaeologists uncover a sunken city off the coast of Greece or ruins in the jungles of Central America, the whispers of Atlantis grow louder. The myth persists because it taps into something timeless, the dream of what once was, and the fear of what can be lost. And so, the legend of Atlantis continues to move between history and imagination, between reality and dream. Whether it was the Minoans destroyed by a volcano, an echo of Egyptian stories, or simply Plato's vision of pride and punishment, it remains one of humanity's most enduring mysteries. As we move forward, we will look more closely at the cataclysm that destroyed Atlantis, the storms, the earthquakes, the floods. What could have caused such sudden destruction? Was it a natural disaster, a shift in the earth, or simply the stroke of a storyteller's pen? The answer lies in the balance between myth and science, where the lost island still drifts, just out of reach. The great cataclysm, how Atlantis was destroyed. The heart of the legend lies not only in the splendor of Atlantis, but in its sudden and terrifying destruction. Plato tells us that in a single day and night of misfortune, the island of Atlantis was shaken by earthquakes and consumed by floods. Its mighty armies, its glittering temples, its harbors and ships, all were swallowed by the sea. What was once the pride of the ancient world vanished beneath the waves, leaving no trace but memory. For generations, storytellers and scholars have wondered, what could cause such a sudden end? Could an entire island truly disappear into the sea overnight? Or was this destruction symbolic, a dramatic way to express the collapse of a corrupt society? To find answers, we must look at both the myths of ancient peoples and the forces of nature that have shaped our world. Throughout history, many cultures have told stories of floods and catastrophes. The Sumerians spoke of a great flood that wiped out much of humanity, a tale echoed in the Epic of Gilgamesh. The Bible tells of Noah's Ark and the waters that covered the earth. In Hindu tradition, there are accounts of Manu, who survived a flood with the help of a divine fish. Native American stories, too, speak of great deluges that reshaped the land. These myths, spread across continents, suggest that ancient peoples carried deep memories of natural disasters, passed down through generations. Atlantis fits into this pattern. The image of an island destroyed by earthquakes and swallowed by the sea resonates with the universal fear of floods and the uncontrollable power of nature. It reminds us that human achievements, no matter how great, are fragile before the forces of the earth. Scientists have long tried to connect the destruction of Atlantis with real geological events. One of the strongest candidates is the eruption of the Thera volcano, as mentioned earlier. This explosion was so powerful that it tore apart the island of Santorini, sending shockwaves across the Mediterranean. Entire settlements were buried in ash, and massive tsunamis raced across the sea, crashing into the coasts of Crete and beyond. To those who lived through it, it must have seemed as if the world itself was ending. Could this disaster, remembered and retold, have become the seed of Plato's tale of Atlantis' destruction? Other natural explanations have also been proposed. Earthquakes are frequent in the Mediterranean, caused by the collision of tectonic plates. Ancient cities have been destroyed by sudden quakes, their buildings reduced to rubble in moments. If Atlantis was real, perhaps it was struck by such a disaster, and the land collapsed into the sea due to shifts in the Earth's crust. Landslides beneath the ocean can also create massive waves, swallowing coastal settlements in moments. Another theory points to the idea of sudden climate change. Civilizations depend on the stability of weather and harvests. A shift in rainfall, a prolonged drought, or the cooling of temperatures could devastate even the most powerful society. If Atlantis was a real place, perhaps its downfall came not in a single night, but in years of hardship, later dramatized into legend. And yet, Plato insists on the suddenness of the event. In a single day and night of misfortune, he writes, the island of Atlantis disappeared into the depths of the sea. This image has haunted the imagination ever since. An entire land with its people, palaces, and temples, gone without a trace. To many, it seems impossible, but to those who have studied natural disasters, it is not entirely beyond belief. Consider Krakatoa, the volcanic island in Indonesia that erupted in 1883. In a matter of hours, most of the island was destroyed, and the surrounding region was devastated by tsunamis. Tens of thousands of people died, and the skies were darkened by ash across the globe. Or think of Pompeii, buried in a single day by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 CE. Nature has the power to erase cities in moments, leaving them frozen in time or buried forever. It is possible that Atlantis, if it existed, suffered a fate like these. A massive volcanic eruption, an earthquake, or a tsunami could indeed destroy an island civilization quickly and thoroughly. Over centuries, the sea would cover the ruins, hiding all evidence beneath the waves. What would remain is only the memory, a story of sudden destruction passed down until it reached Plato. But there is also the symbolic meaning. In Plato's philosophy, the destruction of Atlantis was not just about earthquakes and floods. It was about the moral collapse of a society. The Atlanteans, once noble and just, became greedy and corrupt. They sought power above all else, and in doing so, they lost the favor of the gods. Their destruction was not only physical but spiritual. The sea became a metaphor for the abyss into which human pride can fall. This dual meaning, both literal and symbolic, is what makes the story so powerful. Atlantis speaks both to our fear of nature's wrath and to our awareness of human weakness. It is a warning carved into myth, a reminder that civilizations rise and fall, and that nothing built by human hands is immune to destruction. As centuries passed, the image of Atlantis sinking beneath the waves took on new life in human imagination. Artists painted visions of a city crumbling into the sea, its temples collapsing as waves closed over them. Writers described the cries of people as the waters rushed in, the clash of thunder, and the glow of fire from below. Some imagined survivors fleeing to other lands, carrying fragments of Atlantean knowledge to Egypt, Mesopotamia, or the Americas. Others saw it as a complete erasure, a civilization wiped out so completely that only stories remained. This tension between total destruction and partial survival fed countless theories. If Atlantis was real, did its people escape? Did they carry their culture to new lands, seeding the rise of later civilizations? Could the pyramids of Egypt or the great stone cities of the Americas be echoes of Atlantean knowledge? These questions, though speculative, have kept the legend alive, pushing it beyond Plato's moral tale into the realm of endless mystery. And so, the great cataclysm of Atlantis is more than a moment of destruction. It is a doorway. Through it, we glimpse both the fragility of human achievement and the possibility of hidden histories. Whether caused by fire, water, or moral failing, the fall of Atlantis reminds us that nothing lasts forever, and that even the greatest civilizations can vanish in the blink of an eye. As we continue, the focus will shift from the fall itself to what came after. If Atlantis was lost, what traces, if any, did it leave behind? Could ruins, artifacts, or cultural memories still point to its existence? And how has the search for these traces shaped the way we view our own past? The endless search for Atlantis. After the waves had swallowed Atlantis in Plato's story, what remained was not stone or gold, but memory. And memory has a way of lingering. For thousands of years, people have searched for traces of a lost island, convinced that somewhere, hidden beneath sea or soil, the ruins of Atlantis wait to be found. The first to inherit the tale were the philosophers and historians of Greece and Rome. Most treated Plato's account as allegory, a lesson about power and morality. Aristotle, Plato's own student, is said to have dismissed Atlantis with a simple comment: "He who invented it also destroyed it." Yet even in skepticism, the idea of a sunken world lingered, too compelling to fade away completely. Centuries passed, and during the Middle Ages, much of Plato's work was preserved in monasteries, read only by a few scholars. Atlantis, for a time, slipped into the background. But the story would awaken again with the dawn of the Renaissance, when explorers set sail across unknown seas and rediscovered the ancient texts of Greece and Rome. The discovery of the Americas in the late 15th century gave the legend fresh life. To European eyes, these vast new lands across the Atlantic Ocean seemed like the perfect match for Plato's mysterious island beyond the Pillars of Heracles. Writers and explorers speculated that the indigenous civilizations of the Americas, such as the Aztecs, Maya, and Inca, might be descended from Atlantean survivors. The New World in their imagination became not just a discovery, but a rediscovery, the resurfacing of something lost. As exploration expanded, so too did theories about where Atlantis might be found. Some placed it in the mid-Atlantic, suggesting it was once a continent connecting Europe and the Americas. Others looked to Africa, Spain, or the Mediterranean itself. Maps were drawn, books were written, and expeditions were launched, all chasing a dream half buried in myth. One of the most influential figures in the modern revival of Atlantis was Ignatius Donnelly, an American politician and writer of the 19th century. In 1882, he published Atlantis, The Antediluvian World, a book that argued Atlantis was the cradle of all human civilization. According to Donnelly, when Atlantis was destroyed, its survivors scattered across the globe, bringing knowledge to Egypt, Mesopotamia, India, and the Americas. He believed that similarities between distant cultures, pyramids, myths of floods, advanced astronomy, were evidence of a common Atlantean origin. Donnelly's book was wildly popular, and though scholars rejected many of his claims, it ignited the imagination of the public. For the first time in centuries, Atlantis was not just a story, but a possibility. Writers, poets, and scientists debated it. Artists painted it. Adventurers dreamed of finding it. The lost island became a symbol of hidden history and forgotten wisdom. In the 20th century, the search for Atlantis grew even more ambitious. Advances in archaeology, geology, and oceanography made it possible to explore the sea floor and uncover ancient ruins with greater accuracy. In Spain, some researchers argued that the marshlands of Dinana matched Plato's description of a great plain near the sea. In the Caribbean, divers discovered strange stone formations, such as the so-called Bimini Road in the Bahamas, rectangular blocks beneath shallow waters that some believe are remnants of Atlantean structures. Others turned their eyes to the Mediterranean. Crete, Santorini, and Malta all became candidates, each offering ruins and landscapes that echoed parts of Plato's story. On Santorini, the buried city of Akrotiri revealed a Minoan settlement preserved in volcanic ash, its frescoes and buildings eerily reminiscent of an advanced society suddenly destroyed. Was this Atlantis in disguise? And then there are the more far-reaching theories. Some claim Atlantis lies under Antarctica, preserved beneath layers of ice. Others suggest it was in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, now lost to tectonic shifts. A few even argue that Atlantis was not of this earth at all, that it was a colony of extraterrestrial beings, whose technology and wisdom were misunderstood by ancient humans. Despite these countless theories, no definitive evidence has ever been found. No sunken temples, no Atlantean inscriptions, no proof that an advanced island empire vanished overnight. And yet, the search continues, fueled not only by curiosity, but by something deeper. Atlantis, after all, represents more than a location. It represents the idea that there is always more to discover, that the past still holds secrets waiting to be uncovered. Modern technology has added new layers to this quest. Satellite imagery, sonar mapping, and deep-sea exploration allow researchers to scan the ocean floor with incredible detail. Entire landscapes once hidden beneath waves have been revealed. Ancient coastlines, riverbeds, and even submerged settlements. Some discoveries, such as the sunken city of Dwarka in India or the ruins off the coast of Japan at Yonaguni, show that human civilizations have indeed been lost to the sea. If these could vanish, why not Atlantis? Yet scholars caution against letting imagination run too far. For every genuine discovery, there are dozens of hoaxes, misinterpretations, and wishful guesses. Stone formations shaped by nature can resemble human constructions. Myths from different cultures can be coincidental rather than connected. Atlantis, they remind us, began as a philosophical tale, not a historical record. But perhaps that is precisely why the search never ends. Atlantis is a riddle with no answer, a puzzle that invites endless speculation. Each generation projects its own hopes and fears onto it. For Renaissance explorers, it symbolized new worlds to discover. For 19th century thinkers, it was the key to unifying global history. For modern seekers, it is both an archaeological mystery and a spiritual symbol, a reminder that beneath the surface of our world lies the unknown. The search for Atlantis also reflects something universal in human nature, the longing for lost wisdom. We imagine that in the ruins of Atlantis, there might be answers to questions we have not yet solved about energy, technology, or the rise and fall of societies. The lost island becomes a treasure chest of potential, waiting for us to open it. And so, the hunt continues. Divers descend into the depths, satellites scan the oceans, scholars pore over ancient texts, and dreamers let their imagination drift across maps. Atlantis remains elusive, always just out of reach, like a mirage on the horizon. But even if it is never found, the search itself matters. It drives us to look deeper into history, to explore the oceans, to connect myths with science. Atlantis challenges us to question what we know and to wonder what might still be hidden. As we move forward, let us turn from the external search to the internal one. Beyond maps and ruins, Atlantis has come to symbolize more abstract ideas. The golden ages we long for, the knowledge we feel we have lost, the warning of what happens when power turns to arrogance. In the next part, we will explore how Atlantis has been reimagined not just as a place, but as a symbol, appearing in philosophy, literature, art, and spiritual traditions across the centuries. Atlantis as a symbol. For all the maps drawn, the dives taken, and the theories written, perhaps the greatest treasure Atlantis has given humanity is not physical ruins, but symbolic meaning. From the moment Plato described the island, it has lived as more than geography. Atlantis is an idea, a mirror for our hopes, fears, and philosophies. Plato himself set the tone. To him, Atlantis was a story about hubris, the danger of unchecked ambition, and the rise and fall of civilizations. The Atlanteans, once virtuous, grew arrogant and corrupt. Their power blinded them, their greed consumed them, and their downfall was inevitable. This moral lesson, more than any detail about temples or canals, was the heart of his tale. In this way, Atlantis became a symbol of what happens when human greatness is not balanced with wisdom. Later thinkers extended this symbolism. For philosophers, Atlantis represented the cycle of history, the pattern of flourishing, decline, and destruction that repeats across empires. For theologians, it became a reminder of divine judgment, similar to biblical stories of the flood or the destruction of Sodom. In each retelling, Atlantis carried meaning beyond itself, adapting to the questions of the time. During the Renaissance, as Europe looked outward to the oceans, Atlantis became a symbol of discovery. The idea that a vast, advanced civilization had once thrived across the sea made explorers feel they were reclaiming something lost. Writers like Francis Bacon reimagined Atlantis as a utopia. In his 1627 work, The New Atlantis, Bacon described a fictional island where knowledge and science guided society. Here, Atlantis was not a warning of arrogance, but a vision of possibility, what humanity could achieve through reason and learning. This utopian vision echoed through the Enlightenment. Thinkers fascinated by progress and human potential saw Atlantis as a metaphor for the perfect society. Some even dreamed of building real-world Atlantean communities, places founded on equality, wisdom, and innovation. The lost island became a canvas onto which people could project their ideals. But the symbolism of Atlantis was not always hopeful. In the 19th and 20th centuries, it was sometimes twisted into darker narratives. Pseudo-historians and fringe theorists used Atlantis to claim superiority for certain cultures or races, arguing that they were descendants of Atlanteans. These misinterpretations, though lacking any real evidence, influenced dangerous ideologies and showed how myths can be manipulated. Atlantis became not just a dream of golden ages, but a weapon in arguments about identity and power. At the same time, artists and writers found inspiration in Atlantis, as a setting of wonder and mystery. Poets wrote of its drowned palaces, musicians composed symphonies evoking its fall, and painters captured visions of shining cities beneath the waves. Atlantis entered folklore, blending with local legends of sunken lands, such as Lyonesse in Cornwall or Ys in Brittany. To each culture, it offered a way of speaking about loss, memory, and the sea's hidden depths. By the 20th century, Atlantis had firmly entered popular culture. Science fiction and fantasy embraced it as both a literal place and a metaphor. In comic books, films, and novels, Atlantis became home to lost civilizations, advanced technologies, and sometimes entire races of beings who survived beneath the ocean. Characters like Aquaman ruled Atlantis as an underwater kingdom, blending myth with modern storytelling. This version of Atlantis carried a different kind of symbolism. No longer just a warning or a utopia, it became a symbol of mystery itself. The idea that the world still hides secrets. In an age where much of the Earth was being mapped and explored, Atlantis represented what remained unknown, a frontier of imagination. Spiritual and esoteric traditions also gave Atlantis symbolic weight. Some mystical schools claimed that Atlanteans were highly advanced beings, possessing wisdom about energy, healing, and the cosmos that was lost when the island sank. In these teachings, Atlantis symbolized a forgotten spiritual heritage, a reminder that humanity once had deeper connections to the universe. Believers saw visions of Atlantean temples, crystal technologies, and enlightenment that they argued could someday be regained. Even for those who do not accept such claims, the symbolism remains powerful. Atlantis, in these traditions, stands for the idea of a lost golden age, a time when humanity lived in harmony with nature and knowledge. Its fall represents our separation from that state, and its memory becomes a call to return, to rediscover balance. Across all these interpretations, one theme repeats. Atlantis is never only about the past. It always points to the present and the future. When people speak of Atlantis, they are often really speaking of their own society, its strengths, its dangers, its potential. The lost island becomes a story we tell ourselves about ourselves. And so, whether Atlantis is seen as a cautionary tale, a utopian dream, a racial myth, a work of art, or a spiritual symbol, it continues to live. Each layer of meaning adds to its richness. Each retelling ensures it will not fade. Think of how a single image from Plato, the shining city surrounded by concentric rings of water, has echoed across thousands of years. That picture has been painted on canvas, carved in stone, written into novels, filmed in movies, and dreamed in meditation. It is not merely a place. It is an archetype, a universal image of a lost world. In this way, Atlantis connects to something deep in the human psyche. We are creatures who dream of paradises lost and paradises to come. We imagine golden ages in the past and project them into the future. Atlantis satisfies both longings. It is the world we wish we had, and the world we fear we might destroy. And here lies its greatest power. Whether Atlantis was real or not, it continues to influence real lives. It inspires explorers, artists, thinkers, and seekers. It challenges us to reflect on the rise and fall of civilizations, including our own. It whispers of mysteries still hidden, knowledge still forgotten, wisdom still waiting. As we drift deeper into the story, let us take one more step. Beyond the symbols and the myths, beyond the art and philosophy, lies the heart of the question. What does Atlantis teach us about ourselves here and now? In the final part, we will explore how the legend of Atlantis speaks to modern civilization, offering both warnings and hopes for the future. Lessons of Atlantis for the modern world. As we return from the myths, the maps, and the many retellings of Atlantis, we find ourselves staring not at ruins beneath the sea, but at a reflection in the water, our own reflection. Because the story of Atlantis, more than anything, has always been a mirror. Plato's Atlanteans were not aliens, nor were they gods. They were people, ambitious, powerful, and flawed. Their civilization began with greatness, harmony with nature, skill in engineering, wisdom in governance. But slowly, greed and arrogance crept in. They reached too far, sought too much, and lost the balance that had made them strong. Their downfall was not merely the wrath of the gods, it was the natural consequence of their choices. And in that, Atlantis speaks directly to us today. We too live in an age of extraordinary power. Technology allows us to reshape landscapes, harness energy, and connect across the globe in an instant. Cities rise taller than ever, our machines reach into space, and our science peers into the deepest secrets of nature. It is, in many ways, a golden age of knowledge and possibility. Yet, like Atlantis, we stand on a fragile balance. The same powers that give us prosperity can also bring destruction. Environmental collapse, climate change, weapons of mass destruction, and unchecked greed all echo the themes of Plato's story. The sinking of Atlantis may not be literal, but it is symbolic of how quickly greatness can vanish if wisdom is forgotten. This is why Atlantis endures. It is not only a tale of what was lost, but a warning of what can still be lost. It reminds us that civilizations are not eternal, no matter how advanced. Hubris, the belief that we are untouchable, above consequence, has toppled empires before. Atlantis is the archetype of this truth, dressed in myth to make the lesson unforgettable. But Atlantis also carries hope, for just as it warns us, it also inspires us. Every search for Atlantis, whether through science, exploration, or imagination, is driven by the belief that there is something valuable still waiting to be discovered. A forgotten wisdom, a lesson we once knew, a way of living in balance. Atlantis becomes not only the shadow of destruction, but also the dream of renewal. Writers like Francis Bacon imagined Atlantis not as a failure, but as a vision of what humanity could be, a place where knowledge and virtue guided progress. Artists and philosophers saw it as a symbol of unity, of human potential, of the harmony we long to recover. Even in modern times, when Atlantis appears in fiction or fantasy, it is often depicted as a society advanced beyond ours, a reminder of what we might still achieve. In this sense, Atlantis is both a caution and a call. It warns us of arrogance, but also invites us to dream of something better. It asks us to look inward, to question the foundations of our own world, and to ask, are we building wisely, or are we repeating the same mistakes? Perhaps the true location of Atlantis is not under the waves or buried in forgotten lands. Perhaps it lives in us, in our choices, our societies, our rise and our fall. Atlantis is every civilization that has grown too proud, every empire that has believed itself immortal, every culture that has reached a golden age only to watch it slip away. And yet, Atlantis is also every dream of paradise, every vision of harmony, every belief that humanity can do better. As you drift into rest, think of the waves lapping gently over that imagined island. Think of the temples shining under the sun, the canals circling outward in perfect rings, the towers rising with beauty and strength. Think of the people who walked its streets, filled with pride, with ambition, with hope. And then think of the silence that followed, the ocean swallowing their voices, leaving only ripples in the memory of time. That silence is not just loss, it is also invitation. An invitation for us to remember, to reflect, to carry forward the lessons of Atlantis into our own lives. So when you hear the name Atlantis, do not only imagine a city beneath the sea. Imagine the choices we make every day, the balance we must hold between progress and wisdom, between power and humility. Imagine how easily greatness can slip away, and how precious it is when it is preserved. The legend of Atlantis is not over, because we are still writing it. Our cities, our technologies, our societies, they are all chapters in the same story. Will we repeat the fall, or will we find a way to build a lasting harmony? That question is ours to answer. And perhaps that is why the story still holds us, thousands of years after Plato first spoke it. It is not about whether Atlantis was real, but about whether we are ready to hear what it has to say. As the waves roll on and the night deepens, let the vision of Atlantis drift through your mind, not as a lost island to be found, but as a guide, a reflection, a dream, a reminder that within every civilization lies both greatness and danger, and within every fall, the chance to begin again. Sleep now with Atlantis in your thoughts, the lost city that is never truly lost, because it lives wherever we remember it. And in remembering, we carry its story forward.